Greetings to all. Thank you so much for attending this roundtable, this very important roundtable. I would love to introduce Senator Julia Salazar. She is chair of Women's Issue Committee and the youngest woman of color to be elected. Senator?
Sure. Thank you so much, Jessica. Thank you to everyone for joining us this morning for a roundtable that is focused on the relationship between technology and domestic violence. I'm Senator Julia Salazar. I serve as the chair of the Senate's Committee on Women's Issues. And while we certainly know that people of any gender can be impacted by domestic violence, it's true that the majority of people who are targeted by domestic violence are women. And so addressing the issues that we're discussing today is a top priority of my work in the legislature. October is National Domestic Violence Awareness Month, which was first named nearly 40 years ago by the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence in order to connect victims of domestic violence to one another. Domestic violence affects millions of people in our country and manifests as numerous different kinds of harm. It isn't limited to physical violence. It can look like emotional abuse, humiliation, stalking, manipulation, coercion, isolation. It can mean seizing control of the earned wages of a spouse or family member, invading someone's privacy, using language to destroy a person's confidence, and other ways. Researchers and experts have noted that the risk factors associated with intimate partner violence and domestic violence have been exacerbated during quarantine. For example, increased stress and frustration, as well as limited personal time and personal space, can increase conflicts in the home, which can result in abuse or violence. At the same time, necessary restriction on leaving our homes throughout the pandemic has inhibited victims' ability to reach out for help. Disconnection from institutional support, medical support, informal support networks can make domestic violence even more isolating and even life-threatening. Today, we are narrowing our focus on the role that technology plays in domestic violence, a question that has more relevance today than ever before. I'm thrilled that we have representatives from 14 different organizations participating in today's roundtable, all of whom are here to share their expertise and their experiences on this particular issue. Our purpose today as legislators is to learn from these panelists and ask questions during Q&A after each part so that we can gain a stronger understanding and that I hope will inform forthcoming legislation to prevent domestic violence and more effectively empower survivors of domestic violence. So with that, I have met my 2 minutes and I will pass this on to Senator Savino to say her remarks as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Salazar. I am very happy to be here with my colleagues as we examine this incredibly important issue. I am very proud this term to chair the Internet and Technology Committee. I've been in the Senate now 16 years. I've been in government 30 years this year. I think I've been there longer than Julia's been alive. It's shocking to me. But, you know, I think about where I started my career 30 years ago as a caseworker in the city's Child Welfare Administration and the way we dealt with women who were victims of domestic violence then. If their children, we would routinely take their children away from them if they would not separate from their abuser. We believed then at the time that if you couldn't protect yourself, you couldn't protect your children. We've come a long way from the way we approach cases like that now. Domestic violence, intimate partner violence, power dynamics in relationships is not new. It has been around since the dawn of time. You know, you probably go back to the Garden of Eden, see the first interpersonal power dynamic back then. But we have learned so much and we've changed so much. Julia, you're much luckier to have grown up in an era where people are at least willing to talk about domestic violence, but yet and still there is a stigma attached to it. We've made great strides. The people we're going to hear from today are pioneers in many ways, and they've helped shape public policies that we can better provide services to people so that they can not only get away from their abuser, but we can also talk about reforming their families. Because we know the old adage that children live what they learn. if you grow up in a household where violence is present, you are 10 times more likely to exhibit the same behavior in your own interpersonal relationships. So we've now found a new frontier for violence and interpersonal relationships, and that's the internet. It's an amazing thing. It has connected people around the world. It has opened up opportunities in finance and in the economy and in education and in so many things, and basically brought us all together as one world. But at the same time, it has created a place for people to abuse, harm, stalk, and commit domestic violence. And it leaves a permanent trail. What's on the internet, you can't get back. And that's what makes this so important, that we're examining it now and trying to come up with public policy and legislation to try and find ways to curtail it and to protect people from those who continue to try and abuse them, whether it's in person or on the internet. So I want to thank Senator Salazar for bringing us all together to examine this critically important process as we move forward. Thank you.
And for Senator Prasad to share your remarks if you'd like.
Well, good morning, Senator, and thank you to all of my colleagues for joining us today on this important topic. Domestic violence, intimate partner violence, whatever names we are calling it, is now the highlights of our day. Every day we hear of some young person who is being affected by domestic violence, the entire family. I posted a couple of days ago when I wore my purple and posted the stats on domestic violence during this COVID pandemic, and those numbers are staggering. And a gentleman kept posting, what about the men? He said, too often we're only talking about women when we say domestic violence, but that's not true. Men are affected by domestic violence the same way. It's just that the proportionate number, it's primarily women with children. So the connection with the technology and domestic violence is an important one. Studies have shown that, we're all trying to bring more technology into homes so that families are able to communicate more with agencies, with relatives, with whomever is on the outside. So I thank you, Senator Salazar, for deciding to have this roundtable, because intimate partner domestic violence, it is something that we should continue to speak about. And the use of technology as a means of holding people in those situations hostage is on the rise. So again, I'm happy that Senator Bailey is a male member on this panel and could give his insight into what the males are thinking when they talk about domestic violence. So again, I thank everyone for being here today.
Thank you, Senator Prasad. And now I will pass it to Senator Little to share her remarks if you'd like.
Thank you very much. Let me begin by thanking you, Senator Salazar, for putting this together, because this is a really important issue. And I think, as Senator Savino believes, I'm sure, in our years in the legislature, this has always been an issue. It did get some attention before women really put it in the forefront, but by having more and more women in the legislature, it has more attention that it really needed, and the men have been very supportive of us as well. So I'm here to listen, and I know even in my district, a lot more domestic violence instances than we've had before COVID. So thank you.
Thank you. And now I'll pass it to Senator Kaplan if you'd like to share a few words.
Yes, I too want to take this time to thank Senator Salazar and also Senator Savino for arranging this important roundtable discussion today. And I'm honored to be amongst our wonderful co-chairs for today's event. While October is recognized as Domestic Violence Awareness Month, the reality of many people's lives is that domestic partner abuse is a daily nightmare. They live 365 days a year. This horrible reality has become all the more urgent during the COVID pandemic, as families are under tremendous emotional, mental, and financial stress. I am very fortunate to have co-sponsored webinars with the Safe Center of Long Island to bring awareness and critical information and resources to the residents in my district. And I look forward to hearing from each of our panelists today about the relationship between technology and domestic partner abuse. Despite all of the wonderful advances technology has brought to our lives, there is a dark and dangerous side of that technology that has only made domestic partner abuse even more insidious. Thank you. Thank you for everyone being on this panel today.
Thank you, Senator Kaplan. And finally, last but never least, I want to pass it on to Senator Bailey if you'd like to share some remarks as well.
Sure. So once again, thank you, Senator Salazar, for convening this. This is critically important. So my colleagues in government, in the Senate, I should say, thank you for being leaders in this area with your respective, the respective bills that you pass in your own capacities, in addition to the advocacy that you practice in your own lives as well as your own districts. Senator Prasad said it, as a male, I may have a different perspective just because of my gender, and that may be true slightly, but the reality is that it's not, right? Domestic violence is unacceptable in any shape, form, or fashion, whether it is to a man, to a woman, or a non-binary individual. So let's be clear about how we should make sure that we don't accept it, period. So with the emergence of technology, greater access to information, greater access to anything at the tips of our fingers, is greater access to nefarious individuals who want to perpetuate nefarious conduct, right? So we have to make sure that as we sit at this intersection between emerging tech and more of us being home more often, we have to make a recognition that we have to step up and figure out and do more listening, right? There's a bill that some member Rosick and I have about orders of protection that relate to devices, because it's not just going online and harassing people. It's access to Ring doorbells, it's access to passwords and Apple Watches and things that you may not think about during the course of a day, that people who want to abuse other individuals, they're acutely aware of these things, and they are trying to take every advantage. And as was said by multiple members of the Senate, power dynamics are very real when it comes to domestic violence. The abusers are attempting to exert undue influence and undue power onto the other person. And we have to do our job as legislators to make sure that as they come up with new ways to abuse, we come up with even better ways to protect. So again, I thank you all for having me, and I'm looking forward to a spirited discussion with the experts. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Bailey. And now I'll pass it back to Jessica Franco.
Thank you very much. We actually have one more senator, Senator Montgomery, that I would love to introduce. She's actually calling in. So whenever Senator Montgomery is available, please feel free to introduce yourself.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. I'm very, very happy. And thank you very much, Senator Salazar, for inviting me to be also part of this discussion and for hosting this very important meeting. I want to just say, as Chair of Children and Families, that one of the most difficult aspects, if not the most, is what happens to children in situations where there is domestic violence in the home. So it's very, very important for us to have this meeting and to hear from people who can hopefully give you some very significant and important direction for legislative agenda for the session coming up. And all the best to all of you, and thank you all for your hard work and for approaching issues that are so important to families, especially children, but to families generally in our state. And I'm just looking forward to listening and to being helpful in any way that I can as you pursue some direction in resolutions and ways of dealing with this issue. By the way, there's a very large percent of the women who are incarcerated end up being there in some incident related to domestic violence that they have suffered in their lives for many, many years. So again, thank you very much. And I look forward to hearing and learning from the panelists today. Thanks, Senator Salazar, again.
Thank you, Senator Montgomery. Sorry that that I missed you the first time due to not seeing your video, but we deeply appreciate you participating and bringing your many years of experience and your deep care and focus on this issue. We really appreciate your participation. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Excellent. We're happy to have a group of great organizations and survivors that can lead on this discussion. And so we also understand that this is a very sensitive topic, and we want to foster a conversation that's respectful and comfortable for everyone. And so please feel free, if at any point you feel uncomfortable, you can turn off your camera. And we want to respect everyone's privacy in that matter. And we would love to begin the conversation and start with our first testimony. She is a survivor and domestic violence advocate and activist, Dana.
Great, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. I first like to say, you can hear me, correct? Okay, great. So hello everyone. My name is Dana Hannes-Jack, and I am a survivor of domestic violence, but I don't call myself that today. I consider myself a thriver and an organizer, and you're absolutely right. It was just wonderful to hear from each one of you already. You guys get it. You know the bills that need to be done. You're all working on it. Each and every person that spoke before me spoke in a different area of why we need the help. So I just want to say good morning to everyone, esteemed guests and colleagues. Welcome. I thank you all so much for having me. Thank you so much, Senator Salazar, for doing this. It's an amazing platform. And so basically, I want to give you an idea of what this new technology abuse looks like. So I hadn't dated in quite some time, and I met someone on social media, and at first he sent me a friend request, and we would send messages back and forth, and it was through something like Facebook. It was innocent. And little by little, we got closer. We began to talk about meeting, and we went forward and met up and had a couple of dates. And then before I knew it, I started to recognize those signs and symptoms of an abuser. But it was different this time, because now it's like he would call me 100 times a day, but not just on my phone. Now he's calling me 100 times a day on Facebook, on WhatsApp, on Snapchat. I mean, every platform possible, my phone is constantly going crazy. And I haven't seen him in over a year, and I do have a current order of protection against him. But just coming to talk about this, it reminds me of what I've been through, and the fear is still there. That kind of never goes away. So he took inappropriate pictures of me I was not aware of while I was sleeping, different types of videos, and would threaten to post them. I'm also a chaplain. I help survivors of domestic violence. I help with like an online women's therapy group, and he would threaten to send everyone these pictures and these videos. He actually had my phone and put in some hidden apps so he could track me, who I'm talking to. He would take my phone and not allow me to call anybody or talk to anybody. And he would threaten, that he was going to harm me. And one day, those threats, started coming to fruition. Like, he knew where I was, and thank God I wasn't in my car. He actually stabbed 3 of my car tires. And I wonder, had it been me outside, would I be the one that got hurt? But thank God, it was only to my car. But the problem is, the amount that would cost to fix it was not enough to actually make this a crime and have him arrested. This is why we're here, right? To work on these things. And so, the hidden apps, he can look up and do a people search and find out the names of my children, my family. He has so much stuff that could harm me and would threaten suicide, the hovering over me when I'm on my phone, accusing me of talking to other people, being on dating sites, he had a hidden app where he could see everything and follow me everywhere. And, I thank God that I finally said enough is enough and I looked for help. I began to make police reports and ask for order of protection and, explain that he was able to do things with my phone that I didn't even know were possible. And because of all of these different apps and different ways and different hidden icons, that it was impossible for me to figure out everything that was happening. And the more I stayed away from him, the more the threats got worse. And, I feared for my life that if he did find me through my phone, the very thing that is there for me to call 911 for help is now being used as a weapon against me. What do you do? So tech abuse, it's 1 in 4 women that are survivors of domestic violence, but it's also 1 in 6 men, and the men don't report it, right? It's underreported. It's embarrassing. How do I go in the precinct and tell an officer that this guy has explicit videos of me, pictures of me, and he's threatening to put it up on Pornhub? But you know what? If I'm not transparent and I don't talk about it, if it can happen to me, it can happen to anyone. And so we have to find ways to stop this new form of abuse. There's so many things that I'm sure you guys are aware of. The organization I represent is called VOW, Voices of Women. And, I think that I was grateful that the judge I sat with got it. And in my order of protection, he was ordered not to abuse me through tech abuse anymore. And it has to be broken down and explained that, these different social media sites give out so much of our information. It's scary. If he couldn't find me, he might have found one of my children's houses. There's so much information out there on the media, and you're absolutely correct. Once it's out there, you can't take it back. If I post a picture up, he can get my exact location by Google Earth or something like that. There's so many ways. As technology gets better, the stalking gets better, the abuse gets better. They make fake profiles and hit you up from different places. And then eventually it's them again. And it's like, I'll block him on my telephone, right? Where I won't get the call, but he could leave a voicemail. So I still, even though I'm blocking him, he's still able to leave me a voicemail threatening me. So I'm grateful to be here. I'm excited about the work that we need to get done. And, we advocate for this Safe Time Act, which is going to allow victims of domestic violence and sexual assault to take time, and sexual assault trafficking, human trafficking, to take time off. If you got to go to court, if you got to get an order of protection, if you have to move, I don't want to lose my job. I want to be able to get paid for that time off. And so those are one of the things we're advocating with the Voices of Women. And so I'm grateful to be here. I'm here for any questions. I hope I gave you an idea of what it looks like to be stalked and harassed on the very thing that we use to call 911. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dana. And I am very sorry for your experience and very thankful for your testimony. Thank you very, very much. So, again, let's bring up all of the experts, all of the people who have had these experiences, so that we can find a way to protect them and do it to the best of our ability. So how can legislation address domestic violence and the use of technology? what gaps do you see in current legislation, right? Let's really get creative around this. And so we're going to open up the discussion to our panelists, and we want to begin with Amy Barnes. She's the executive director of Seven Dancers Coalition. I would love for her to introduce herself and, of course, share her experience. We can come back to Amy Barnes. Our second panelist would be Bridget McBrain, Government Relations Manager for the Jewish Board of Family and Children Services. Hi, welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for holding this conversation. I just want to share our perspective from the Jewish Board of Family and Children's Services. We're a provider organization. We have 4 domestic violence locations. 3 of those are emergency shelters. The other is a tier 2 shelter for longer term stays. And those women and men at that location also struggle with mental health conditions. So I had a few things to bring up to this conversation. I want to share our perspective of how we have been working through the COVID challenges and how that changes the technology that we've been using to support our survivors. So first, I just want to share an experience of what it looks like from a survivor. They may call us in the middle of the night and ask to be taken to shelter. And we do a pickup. We have to check the phone at that time to make sure that the phone is off, that there is no location tracking going on, and then welcome them into the new location and their new life and go through the steps that they have to take to make sure that they and their family are safe. So it's very challenging to, be concerned about, is a phone safe? Can it be, just left off? Do we have to really look to get a new laptop, for example, rather than trying to find all the malware that's located on that device? And of course, then the costs that are associated with, the new technology that they need. The second thing is that we are struggling with Wi-Fi challenges at all of our locations. I mean, this isn't unique to a domestic violence shelter. This also happens in supportive housing complexes, at homeless shelters. There's a lot of Wi-Fi use going on right now at COVID, and we've had to upgrade all of our systems so that we're able to take on the amount of data that's going back and forth as kids are joining for school and things elsewhere. The other COVID kind of experience has been family court and being able to file electronically. Our survivors are saying that they're much more comfortable, not having to appear at court and being able to be connected to lawyers that help that process go smoothly. It's been an on and off challenge where, sometimes you have an appointment for a hearing and for whatever reason, it doesn't happen and you have to go back and reschedule. But it is a unique and something that we hope continues as we go through this pandemic. I just want to say thank you for the legislature. I know there are a couple of bills, about restraining orders and being able to work with police and empowering the police so that they know what capabilities are out there and that they take these issues as seriously as they deserve to be. The last thing I want to bring up also is, the power of technology to empower our survivors. Having those connections are so important for them to find jobs, to continue their education. And when a provider is struggling to provide, the level of internet that's required at one location, it can interfere with those processes. So by supporting the shelters and allowing us, to have the capabilities, that really goes a long way. Just from a provider perspective, it cost us $40,000 to update at one location, all of our Wi-Fi. And as some of our survivors move to other apartments, they're looking to us to help them continue these services. And it's always a resource challenge, that lets them move on and continue in the supports that they've had. We also have a unique thing of our tier 2 shelter where we use technology to connect to therapy services. And that's been a really big deal. The availability of mental health services through telephone calls and through Zoom has really allowed people to have greater access. So as much as there are challenges in technology, I think we've seen very positive things in terms of being able to file orders of protection electronically and other, family court motions. We've also seen a lot of progress in helping people connect to the internet, but more work still needs to be done to allow the providers to provide all of those supports. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to introduce Jolie Moran, Director of Advocacy, Vera House.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for the opportunity to be here with you all today. My name is Jolie Moran. I am the Director of Advocacy at Vera House. Vera House is a comprehensive domestic and sexual violence agency in Syracuse, New York, and our mission is to live in a world free of violence and abuse. Our services are, we do counseling, we provide advocacy services, sheltering, as well as do a lot of prevention education work in regards to the areas of domestic and sexual violence and sexual harassment. Today, I'm going to speak with you a little bit in regards to, I think, some of the challenges that we are specifically seeing in regards to the non-residential services that we provide. So on our advocacy services, which I think were really highlighted tremendously due to the COVID-19 pandemic. As I think has already been stated, we live in a world that is technology focused, that we are constantly trying to navigate in our phones or on the internet. And I think the COVID-19 pandemic has really presented an opportunity for us to look at safety and really look at the challenges in safety in regards to technology. So some of the things that we have experienced is knowing that when we were in the time where everybody was in their homes, obviously there were many individuals who were being socially isolated with their abusers. It made our advocates' jobs exceptionally challenging to try to reach our clients, to engage with our clients. We have found over the course of the last few years that sometimes the best way to reach folks is through cell phones. So our advocates have been provided with cell phones and often engage with our clients through mobile devices, and obviously have had to really think about safety in terms of that, but even more so during COVID-19, knowing that perhaps their abuser could be watching. We did have to make the decision as well to dedicate time, energy, and resources. And we moved not only to doing a 24-hour hotline chat, but we also started a web chat, thinking that perhaps even if somebody could get away from their abuser just even for a short period of time to reach out to us that way, we felt like that was a very valuable solution. One of the other things, I know somebody highlighted pieces in regards to children. I think one of the things that we've also seen, really see an uptick in, is that during custody visitation, perhaps the abuser is either taking the cell phones away from the kids to be able to communicate with the other party, or are insisting that perhaps they're on FaceTime or Zoom or whatever service that they're usually using to see that other parent. And so we're seeing that a lot more frequently on our end, and obviously trying to navigate those situations pretty critically. One of the other things that I was happy to hear that there's perhaps some potential legislation that might be being looked at in regards to safety and technology safety in regards to other devices. So one of the things that I was planning on bringing up today is a specific situation that we have had in which a victim her ex-partner has been hacking, is a very tech-savvy individual and is hacking into her Wi-Fi pretty frequently. And one of the ways that she knows that this is happening is the Roomba keeps going off at all different times throughout the night. And she knows that this is him. It's somebody who, like I said, has the capability to do some of this, and it's presenting as being pretty terrifying for her. I think some of the challenges that obviously that we continue to have is that law enforcement, specifically in cases of technological abuse, it's a lot harder, I think, sometimes to prove. Is it really the abuser? Is it somebody else? And this presents challenges not only for our advocates in trying to advocate for safety and accountability for the perpetrators, but it also puts victims and survivors in a place of feeling like, am I crazy? Is this something that I'm making up? Which continuously feeds into the pattern of that abuser controlling and perpetuating abuse. So I think that collectively, if we can try to hopefully figure out some of this and think about, how do we maybe get ahead of this? As I know technology is always ever presenting, I'm happy today to be with all of you to kind of think through some of this. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next, I would like to introduce Sarah Eldridge, Assistant Program Director of the Secret Garden Barrier-Free Living. Welcome. You're muted.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here. I'm happy to join my fellow advocates. My name is Sarah Eldridge. I'm the Assistant Program Director at Barrier Free Living Secret Garden Program. We are a New York City agency that provides services to survivors of domestic violence who have disabilities and to those who are deaf and hard of hearing. We have a domestic violence shelter, a non-residential program, and a supportive housing program. And I share many of the concerns that my colleagues, as well as Dana, have mentioned. Technology is obviously a necessary component of survivor safety plans, particularly during this pandemic. It has been a key way that we have stayed in contact with the folks that we serve, whether that's through calls and emails. We also recently launched a chat feature on our website, so we had another way to get in touch with folks, particularly people with disabilities. They already had limited means of communicating before COVID, and then COVID has further restricted their opportunities to reach out and get help. So technology is obviously very important, but as folks have mentioned, it can often be misused as a tool to control survivors. One big challenge that we face is that abusers will hack into folks' phones, they'll install spyware, malware, they may damage the phones, they may break them or steal them, and of course that sort of continual harassment of texting them, calling them at all hours of day and night. Someone mentioned that we often see this with children, and that's certainly true. Abusers will misuse, custody and visitation agreements to call someone at midnight insisting they want to talk to their child, for example, right? And so sometimes survivors will want to try and get a new device, but oftentimes they can't afford that. We work with a lot of survivors who are very, very low income, undocumented folks who don't have any source of income, and that can be really difficult because you can't be without your cell phone or your laptop or your tablet, particularly in this time period. Another big concern for us is social media. It's really frequently used to stalk and harass victims. Social media sites generally automatically opt users into publicly sharing their information, including name, photos, location. And so to change those privacy settings can be really difficult, really confusing. Many folks don't even realize how much information is being publicly shared. And so particularly for the folks that we work with who may have learning disabilities, cognitive disabilities, it can be really hard to figure that out. And so a lot of times their information is being shared. Abusers will create fake profiles. They'll use other people's profiles to harass their victims. And another thing that we see a lot is abusers posting really vague and threatening messages that a survivor will understand is meant to be a threat. So something like talking about how many guns that they own, or some vague statement like, I know what you did and I'm gonna make sure that you pay, or using violent imagery. But because it's not explicit, it doesn't explicitly mention the survivor, it doesn't say explicitly what it is that they're planning to do, it can make it really hard for survivors to report this and to get any help because it's not clear. So one big issue, right, is proving intent to cause harm. That's a huge thing that we face. So that's these status updates. It can also be with revenge porn, right? So there is a New York State law, against revenge porn, but the victims have to prove that there was an intent to cause harm. I worked with one woman whose abuser, she had shared intimate photos with him and then he posted them online and he told everyone, yeah, that's fine. She gave me permission. She wanted this. You know what type of person she is, really trying to portray her as someone who was okay with all these, sexually explicit photos being posted. And it really damaged a lot of her relationships. And it was really hard for her to prove that she didn't actually intend for that to happen. And then of course, someone also had mentioned that a lot of information is just publicly available, addresses, names, all that kind of thing. It can be really hard to take down. So what I think is really important is that just as advocates have worked for so long to promote a consent-based culture that really takes survivors seriously in the offline world, we really need to think about using that in the online world, that we're centering the consent of survivors for whatever information is being posted, and that we're really taking them seriously. If they say that this is threatening, if they're saying that this is abuse, we need to listen to them and take them seriously. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. Now I would like to introduce Stella K. Hirsch, Staff Attorney of Domestic Violence Law Project at Safe Horizon.
Hello and good morning. I hope my audio is working. All right, okay. You never know anymore what's gonna go awry. I'm very grateful for this opportunity to speak with you this morning. Thank you, senators, for convening this roundtable. And I want to thank all the other participants for sharing their thoughts and perspectives. I'm incredibly grateful to be a member of this community of advocates and for this opportunity to address the committee and amplify the voices of our clients with regard to this incredibly complex issue related to domestic violence. Our office, the Domestic Violence Law Project specifically, provides family law information to New Yorkers via our own hotline, Safe Horizon Domestic Violence Shelters, Safe Horizon Family Court Programs, and through our partnership with the Family Justice Centers. Our staff of 10 attorneys is a very small part of Safe Horizon and also provides direct representation to survivors of intimate partner violence in each of the 5 boroughs in both family and Supreme Courts, especially with regard to family offense, custody, visitation, child support, spousal support, and divorce matters. At this time, we were only able to provide representation to New Yorkers who earn less than 200% of the federal poverty guidelines. Pre-pandemic, the demand for our services exceeded our capacity. And over the past 7+ months, even as the City Family Court's operations are limited, we have experienced an increase in demand and have even had to expand our services, including drafting and filing family offense petitions on behalf of pro se litigants in the New York City Family Courts. Although we are happy to provide the services that are needed, it is without a doubt taxed our resources for our staff. And we are experiencing a great degree of stress trying to accommodate the expanding need in our community. At the Domestic Violence Law Project, we follow a client-centered practice model and work to support our clients with an emphasis on safe, sustainable, and creating a safe, sustainable, and independent life. As the committee members and roundtable panelists know well, this work requires addressing a number of domains of functioning. Our clients often encounter barriers related to income, instability, as well as racism, sexism, ableism, and language and education access. Too often, our law enforcement and judicial systems view our clients in isolation. And oftentimes the experience of being in court isolates them even further, so that the court and law enforcement often just see our client, the other parent, and the child. and do not fully appreciate the complexities of a person's lived experience. This is especially true when it comes to issues related to technology abuse. Abusers using social media, smart devices, text, and email to harass, track, and stalk clients are often able to take minimal measures to mask their identity. Law enforcement is very often reluctant to investigate these messages for contextual clues indicating the source of those harassing messages, telling survivors receiving dozens or even hundreds of harassing calls and messages from their abusers that they are unable to prove that the abuser is behind the unwanted contact. This is further complicated if the client is struggling with language access. We often find that the courts are unfamiliar with technology abuse, so that it becomes nearly impossible to overcome the rebuttal that anyone could have sent those text messages from spoofed numbers. Anyone could have posted from those Facebook profiles. It is extremely frustrating for survivors to hear that although the source of this abuse is clear and obvious to them, it is impossible to prove to law enforcement and in the courts. Further, the wounds that technology abuse inflicts are not visible, not the bruises and black eyes of the traditional model of physical abuse. Therefore, this kind of abuse can be minimized and even dismissed. Survivors are told, the solution is easy. Simply block each and every one of those hundreds of spoofed numbers or Facebook accounts. Or just change your number, delete your social media, replace your device. This kind of flippant advice shifts the burden of addressing the abuse to the survivor and treats digital identity and social networks as less than real or substantial. For digital natives especially, advising that in order to avoid abuse, they discard their connection to their online networks of support and community is equivalent to advising a person to avoid abuse by simply relocating and changing their name. It disregards the lived experience of survivors and minimizes the vitality of the relationships established and maintained through digital communication. Further, survivors with limited resources often do not have the ability to simply discard or replace physical devices and mobile numbers and are often tied to identity and verification. As many of us have learned in 2020, our mobile numbers and devices are an essential tool for navigating both on and offline existence. I want to reiterate my gratitude for the legislative interest in these issues. There is absolutely a role for legislation that requires increased training and awareness of these issues for state actors, limiting the sale and distribution of spyware, as well as increased transparency on the part of social media companies. Specifically, a requirement that these companies maintain and allow a client to view the IP addresses associated with sign-ins to that client's accounts. Finally, it is my position that, in addition to the specific legislation, a recognition that digital life, identity, and community is just one facet of a person's lived existence means that legislation that addresses inequality and increases access to resources, including technology, is essential to address these issues. A person without a home does not have access to secure private Wi-Fi. A person without language access cannot benefit from supportive services. A person without financial security cannot access a digital life. A person without access to digital life cannot connect to the resources and support available online. Acknowledging and addressing inequality broadly is essential to nurturing a community that treats each individual with respect and dignity. Thank you.
Thank you, Stella. Thank you. Now I would like to introduce Margarita Guzman, Executive Director of the Violence Intervention Program. Welcome.
Good afternoon. How is everybody? Thank you so much. I want to thank Senator Salazar and the Committee on Women's Issues for hosting this discussion, as well as Senators Savino, Prasad, Montgomery, Bailey, and Little for your attendance and your attention on this matter. My name is Margarita Guzman. I'm the Executive Director at the Violence Intervention Program. I also want to thank everybody who has spoken before me. I feel like, Stella, you just summarized so beautifully what it is, the themes that we are all hearing on this discussion. A little bit about VIP for those who don't know us. We're the only culturally specific service provider in New York City whose mission is working with Latinx survivors of domestic and sexual violence, the vast majority of whom are immigrants. We operate a domestic violence shelter, emergency transitional housing program, and a live 24/7 hotline. We also have community-based programs located within low-income Latinx neighborhoods in New York City that provide critical social services and advocacy. We have a robust community communications and outreach team established some innovative sexual violence and economic justice programs that are addressing long-term healing and stability after violence. This winter, we'll be launching a new child and adolescent program, as well as a rapid rehousing project to support survivors to avoid or shorten homelessness caused by domestic violence. And because my colleagues have done such a brilliant job of noting the myriad ways in which technology is used as a tool for abuse, I want to focus my time on one other component of the relationship between domestic violence and technology, which is the impact of poverty and not having any access to that technology. Last year, VIP served over 1,400 survivors, all of whom reported incomes under the median average, and 80% of whom made less than $15,000 a year here in New York City, and doing their best to survive and to feed, clothe, and house their children. When we think at VIP of the intersection of domestic violence and technology, the primary challenge for us is a lack of access, or limited access, which really then limits a victim's help-seeking behavior. In our population, phones are often shared among multiple family members in a household, or even multiple people who are sharing one apartment who are not necessarily family members. And other devices like tablets and laptops and home computers, which are so common in the homes of New Yorkers throughout the state, are often non-existent in the homes of low or no income immigrants. And that severely, of course, limits the access of this population to even have a device to connect with the outside world, including domestic violence service providers. And even if they do have a reliable cell phone or another device, internet bandwidth has become a huge challenge, especially during the pandemic, because their kids are often working remotely on their school-issued or DOE-issued devices and using that bandwidth so that they can attend school. And then, of course, even the challenge of learning new platforms for engaging services is a barrier to get where we need to go. All of us as service providers did so much to pivot to find HIPAA and VAWA compliant online technology to conduct our group services and our individual counseling. But those platforms aren't always easy or organic to follow, especially if you've had limited access with that technology in the past. So when the majority of a counseling session is spent trying to make sure somebody can get on, be on, and then there's only a few minutes left to address the violence, it certainly is an impact on the effectiveness of that intervention. When we usually think about the digital divide, we usually think about kids and education, which is of course a really critical thing. But what this twindemic, right, this pandemic and its related economic devastation has really highlighted is that no community that no survivor who's experiencing this is experiencing with a greater level of suffering than undocumented immigrants who have really experienced that economic devastation in a unique way here in New York State. I'm not aware of any current legislation that seeks to provide technological resources to low and no income immigrants. It's important to note that there has been no federal or state relief whatsoever to undocumented immigrants specifically since the pandemic set in, and these are areas where the legislature can take an active role. Another area where the legislature can be of support is by providing flexible funding built into all of the state administered contracts and new funding that permits organizations to purchase technology for survivors so that we can stay connected with a provider and also have means for reaching out for assistance, as well as funding to DV groups to host workshops on technology use so that survivors have a better sense of how to use those platforms. It was a recommendation promoted by the Governor's Domestic Violence Task Force and one that we heartily support, that flexible funding to help meet the ever-changing and emergent needs of survivors as they are presented. So I just want to thank you for your commitment to addressing this matter from a holistic perspective and for your work to help build strong bridges to communities that are least likely to access support when they need it because they don't have this bridge to technology. Thank you again.
Thank you, Margarita. I would like to take this time to introduce Amy Barnes, the Executive Director of Seven Dancers Coalition. Welcome.
Good morning. My name is Amy Barnes, and I'm the Executive Director of Seven Dancers Coalition. Our service area is all Native American women in New York State. and we are located in Akwesasne along the Canadian border. Actually, half of our reservation is located in Canada and half in the United States. This makes for a jurisdictional nightmare because not only are we in 2 countries, we are also in 2 counties and 2 provinces. Perpetrators find it easy to escape the law by running to the other side of the border. Victims find it hard to feel safe when technology places them within the reach of the perpetrator with little or no accountability and without being face-to-face. According to the National Institute of Justice Research Report, Violence Against American Indian and Alaska Native Women and Men, the 2010 findings from the National Intimate Partner and Sexual Violence Survey that was published in 2016, more than 4 out of 5 American Indian and Alaska Native women have experienced violence in their lifetime. In 2010, the prevalence of stalking was almost 1 in 2 American Indian and Alaska Native women have experienced stalking in their lifetime. Today, women's footprints are easily tracked by using their phones. In 2010, when the survey was completed, technology was not as advanced as it is now. These numbers of stalking are virtually obsolete. The survey was completed in 2010, and the numbers are higher than that now. It is the most recent published survey that everyone in my field are using for their stats. Since 2010, the speed at which technology has progressed has allowed perpetrators to get away with more and cause more damage to the emotional well-being of the victims. Perpetrators have the ability to emotionally break them down without the inconvenience of facing them in person. The insults and the put-downs are more prevalent because they can hide behind their screens and then be super sweet when they see them in person. Not only are the victims being watched in public, they are being watched online. It is also making it harder for victims to feel a sense of safety when every move that they make can be watched. This is a small community where everyone knows each other, and perpetrators can enlist their family members to assist in their emotional harassment of the victim. Perpetrators are crafty in how they word their threats too. This makes it harder for the victim to get results from law enforcement when the laws are written a certain way that doesn't account for the underlying threats. Women are often left without any recourse, and law enforcement has their hands tied because of the ways the laws are written. Technology has increased so much, and perpetrators are genius in how they can damage a victim without being face-to-face, and laws are slower in catching up. Victims here in Akwesasne during COVID seek out assistance of our domestic violence agency and have increased the instances of in-house shelters. We have many federally recognized reservations across New York State, and not all of them will accept federal or state funding, and they're very poor. They don't have services for victims of domestic violence and sexual assault at all. So they are forced to seek services or not allowed to even seek services outside of their area. One of the things that I would also ask for is a flexible funding stream to be able to assist these victims. And I wanted to thank you all for all of your assistance and taking the time to listen, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Amy Barnes, Bridget McBrain, Jolie Moran, Sarah Eldridge, Stella Kate Hirsch, Margarita Guzman. Thank you to this diverse group of advocates and service providers. The work you do is clearly priceless. We want to take this time for Q&A for any senators who may have any questions or comments for the panelists.
I do.
Yes, and just please unmute yourself and feel free to ask the question or the comment.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, ladies, for your testimony. I want to thank Dana for also sharing her experiences. I'm sitting here, I've been texting with one of my friends at the district attorney's office here in Staten Island. I know I shared some back and forth with Senator Bailey about whether or not we need to look at the order of protection statutes. And so according to this District Attorney McMahon's office, full orders of protection will say no contact whatsoever, meaning in-person, phone, email, text, or social media. But they do say that there are serious challenges with proving contact on social media because of links to accounts and IP addresses, et cetera. Have you, in helping women who are, particularly women who are affected by this, have you seen that as the problem, that while there is clear violations of orders of protection that have been issued, there's no way to prove it because of these challenges that the DAs may face? Can you share, what your experience is? Because I suggested to Senator Bailey in another text that perhaps we need to sit down with the DAs and talk about what we can do to beef up the statute so they can actually, so it can mean something, because it means nothing. We used to say handing someone an order of protection isn't going to help them if the person who's abusing them is going to shove it down their throat. Now it's just digitally. So whoever wants to respond.
I feel like I can speak to this a little bit, and I'm sure others can as well. I know locally we have actually been seeing that even from the police standpoint is that they're actually saying to victims and survivors that we're not going to charge on, let's say, an aggravated harassment, because then from the DA's office, they're hearing it's too hard to prove. So it ends up being really problematic, in a variety of different ways, and also gives us a limited amount of resources as far as being able to advocate for our clients to even get to that arrest standpoint, because the law enforcement are also getting the messaging from the DA's office that we don't know what to do with this. We can't prove this. So I don't know if that's also happening, on top of the violation of the order of protection in communities as well.
Well, I think we need to dig deep as to why they think what's hard to prove. Clearly, if an order of protection says you have to remain, you can't go within 500 feet of a person's house. We know what that is. If a person's within 500 feet, that's a clear violation. You know how to prove that. You have eyewitnesses, the person was there, they've been arrested. So what is it about the contact through social media, through your social media accounts that is difficult to prove? And I think we have to figure out a way to flesh that out in the statute. Certainly this has given me something to think about. What does it mean, and why can't DAs prosecute it, or why do they think it's not worth their time? Because if, as you all know, abusers are going to find a way to get around it to get to their victim. That's what they do. That's what they do. And if they know that these types of violations of the orders of protection are not going to be prosecuted or followed up on, they're going to pursue them until they get what they want. So thank you all. If anybody has anything else they'd like to share on that, I'd certainly be interested in hearing it.
Yeah, I would just like to add, I do, in addition to what Ms. Moran mentioned, I think what we hear most often is just the complexity of investigating the source of these messages. So I think oftentimes, as I mentioned, there are context clues that this is the person, the abuser is the person sending the messages. But when they're using a number spoofing technology, or they're creating multiple false Facebook accounts, it just can be very time consuming for, the police department to investigate that. I know that we've had issues as advocates, and I know those issues carry over to the DA's offices with regard to the responsiveness of social media companies with regard to subpoenas. So those can take an extremely long time to get information back from. So, again, one of the, I think, simpler pieces of legislation, as simple from my perspective, is a requirement that social media companies, at the very least, provide users with access to a record of the IP addresses from which their account was logged in. Because in the cases in which survivors' own accounts are being used to harass or defame them, that would be a way that we could establish at least the IP location, and that would be rather easy. But I think it's just the complexity and familiarity with these technologies which remains a barrier.
Thank you.
I have a question for anyone who would like to answer. I was reminded of this as Sarah was speaking, really what steps whether legislative or otherwise, can we take to minimize the impact of domestic violence on children in situations where the violence is being directed at one of their parents?
I do have a thought. This is a little beyond technology, and I want Sarah, I'm sure Sarah has probably some more feedback. But one of the issues that I've seen, having formerly worked in child protection, and I see it now working with survivors, is that oftentimes the child protective investigation results in an extended supervision of the victim of abuse, even beyond even when that person has sought their own protective order. During COVID, we have been glad to see that ACS in the city has moved to virtual supervision and visitation, which has minimized the direct impact of that kind of state surveillance as a result of a child protective investigation. But in the past, I'm familiar with cases where a survivor has been under ACS supervision, meaning twice monthly visits to their home, looking through their refrigerator and cupboards for years, when the actual respondent on those matters never actually appeared in court and suffered no actual consequences for those actions. So that has an impact. I think the fact that those school visits and home visits stigmatize a child and can further be a trauma reminder of the incident is something that I think could and should be addressed. Because I don't feel as if the child protective workers feel as if it's instrumental in preventing further violence either. Oftentimes they're the ones that see the harm that extended surveillance causes to children and families trying to rebuild and recover.
And if I may jump in, I think it's also very worth noting that the welfare of the child and the welfare of the abused parent are inextricable. If you want to support the child, you support the abused parent, and that is going to be the most direct way, not just to support the child's emotional or their physical and emotional safety in the moment, but the ongoing healing that will be possible for that family after they leave your office, after the court case ends, after the investigation closes. It's so important to make sure that you're investing in a healthy abused parent, because that is what's going to create intergenerational healing for the child as well.
Absolutely. I just really want to jump in and second what Margarita and Stella are saying. Particularly when we see child protective services, a big issue that we see is often sort of this idea of what's in the best interest of the child, which absolutely, but what that often means is that we wind up disregarding the domestic violence that is happening, because if there's no evidence that the child was directly physically abused, then the idea becomes like, well, then it must be safe for them to see the abusive parent, right? Which completely ignores the trauma that the child is being exposed to, the fact that abusers often manipulate custody and visitation orders specifically so that they can maintain that power and control over the abuse survivor. And a lot of times it's not even about the child. They don't show up for the visitation, they don't pick up the kid, they don't bring them back on time, but then they use it as a way to manipulate and to say like, well, I want to see my kid, but then they actually don't. So it's a huge problem. Another issue that we've run into is where child protective workers kind of coerce the survivor into coming into shelter with this idea being, oh, this isn't safe, so if you don't go into shelter, you're going to lose your child. When parents are not ready to go into shelter, they're not successful, right? They don't participate. They don't necessarily, they might not be ready to abide by all of the safety rules that we have in place, all the programming rules, and it winds up creating actually more disruption for the parent and the child and more frustration for everyone involved. So just really not centering and really not having like a trauma-centered lens. As Margarita was saying, when we focus on the parent, that really helps the child.
Thank you.
You know, I just want to also mention a resource that's been very helpful to us, and I don't know if it also applies upstate, but the Family Justice Centers here in New York City will do a security check so that, you know, it's not available all the time. It's not available at every single location, but it's one way that like a provider who may not have that technology resource can at least find a linkage so that we can run like, you know, the cleaning software capabilities so that somebody doesn't lose their phone or lose their laptop. When somebody comes into shelter, you have to protect your location, and it's sometimes very difficult and coercive, to mandate some safety regulations on your clients.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much again for just all the input. And so we have split up the domestic violence and technology discussion into two parts. And now we're heading into the second part with the panelists. And we will go just like we did with the first one. I will introduce and they can absolutely join us. So I will begin introducing Amy Barash. She's the Executive Director of Her Justice. Welcome.
Oh, you can see me. Sorry, I was looking at all the other faces and couldn't recognize myself. There I am. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Senator Salazar and the Senate Women's Issues Committee for inviting me to participate in this legislative roundtable. I'm Amy Barash. I'm the Executive Director of Her Justice, a New York City-based nonprofit provider of free legal assistance to women living in poverty. And as others have said before me, and I will try not to be redundant, domestic violence has been on the rise during the COVID pandemic. At the same time as we are more and more reliant on technology. So this is an extremely timely topic to be discussing, and thank you for giving me this opportunity. In 2019, Her Justice provided a range of legal help to more than 4,000 women and 5,000 children living in poverty in New York City in the areas of family, matrimonial, and immigration law. Our service delivery model makes us unique. Our small legal department of about 21 people who speak over 10 languages other than English recruits, trains, and then serves as virtual mentors to volunteer attorneys from the best firms across the city. These volunteer lawyers then stand side by side with women who would otherwise have to navigate the complex legal system on their own. Our 21-person legal unit mobilizes hundreds of lawyers who deliver more than $41 million worth of legal services every year. I am going to focus my remarks primarily on the confluence of domestic violence technology and access to civil legal services, since that's where our work is done. And panelists before me have spoken more specifically to some of the ways in which tech is used in intimate partner violence. Our clients are the working poor, as others have discussed. They have very limited resources. They live in all 5 boroughs. More than half of our clients are foreign born. A quarter of them need interpreters in court, and most are mothers who are or become the heads of their households. 75% of our clients are victims of domestic violence. The civil courts are an essential resource for victims of partner violence. Her Justice works closely with many community-based organizations, including some of whom have spoken this morning, who are able to provide emergency shelter and counseling and other services that are vital to people who've experienced partner violence. Legal services are an essential, necessary complement to that work. Orders of protection are the legal remedy that first come to mind for most people when they think about intimate partner violence. But in fact, most of our work involves negotiating custody and divorce, visitation, and immigration status. Domestic violence is not only about a moment in time, but about a journey. If a victim has a child with the person who has abused them, that journey can last 18 years or more, with seemingly endless opportunities for the abuser to find ways to control and coerce their victim. Her Justice works exclusively in New York City, and as many of you I'm sure know, the New York City Family Court has been operating with very limited capacity since mid-March. Cases filed pre-COVID are moving very slowly. Cases filed during COVID are not moving at all. And then there are many cases that have not been filed as people wait for the courts to return to full operation. While I know that today's topic is specifically technology, I would be remiss without stating that it is truly vital that state funding be released to civil legal service providers and that provisions be made to ensure robust future funding so we can be ready for the certain explosion of need and demand for legal assistance in the months to come. Victims of domestic violence will be less able to achieve safety if they cannot access free legal assistance. So in New York City, COVID has made access to technology essential for participation in our civil justice system. The family and divorce courts are now accepting e-filings. Any hearings are held remotely, and papers and evidence must be submitted by PDFs electronically. Given the substantial number of unrepresented litigants in family court and the digital divide that has only been highlighted and exacerbated by this pandemic, her justice is very concerned about how litigants will be able to appear remotely in court. For clients represented by nonprofits like ourselves, appearing will be difficult. For unrepresented litigants, it may be impossible. In addition to lack of technology, for many victims, access to technology itself can become a tool of control wielded by their abuser. Stealing cell phones, changing passwords, refusing to pay Wi-Fi bills can leave a victim isolated. Appearing through Microsoft Teams is not possible if your home is not safe, if you don't have a way to create a quiet, confidential space in your home, if you can't appear without your children being present and hearing your testimony, or if your partner can gain access to those virtual proceedings. Her justice has equipped several spaces in our Manhattan offices to be used by clients for virtual appearances for just that reason. But for the unrepresented, with many public access computers now unavailable, they have very limited recourse. A common risk for victims with today's technology is the spyware that has been mentioned before. It can be installed on shared household devices, can be used to monitor their victims. Many of our clients report to us that their partners just seem to know where they are all the time, and it's often hard to know exactly what technique they're using to do that. Even without fancy devices, clients are tracked. A client of mine had her husband receiving the location of her phone at all times at his demand. And when she was planning to leave, she planned to turn off that function when she fled, but was terrified about thinking about whether or not he would receive notification that she turned off that system, and then how much time that would leave her to change locations. I also just want to reiterate that although technology seems very fancy these days and we're all appearing here remotely, good old-fashioned Google searches are still an incredible risk to our clients. You can find all sorts of information online, like political donations, voter registration, home ownership, bankruptcy filings. And although there are provisions in some places to keep victims, for them to keep their information private, once it's been public, it's very hard to claw it back. So at the end of the day, for us, the fact that technology has become the way to access justice is both a blessing and a curse for victims of domestic violence. It means that a dedicated abuser can interfere with that essential right and use technology as part of their coercive control, blocking access to justice. In 2008, when I ran the New York State Office for the Prevention of Domestic Violence, members of the legislature made it a crime to prevent a person from destroying a phone in order to interfere with someone's calling 911. That law recognized that the destruction of a phone was not so much about property damage, but about blocking access to help. A dozen years later, the expanded reliance on technology has created many more opportunities for abusers to block their victims from accessing the help of the courts. And we must continue to stay vigilant to that risk and incorporate it into our fight for access to justice. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you, Amy, for your advocacy. I would like to take this time to now introduce Catherine Trugo dos Santos, Deputy Executive Director for Programs in NYC Anti-Violence Project. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Can everyone hear me okay? Wonderful. Always the technical stuff, right? So glad to be here. Thank you to the Commission on Women's Issues and to Senator Salazar, Savino, Perso, Montgomery, Little, and our moderator, Jessica Franco Ramos. Thank you also to Senator Bailey, who lifted up the experiences of non-binary people and men who are survivors. I also want to thank my friend Dana and all the amazing folks at the Voices of Women Organizing Project for their work they do to uplift survivor voices. Everyone on this call so far has spoken so eloquently about the issues facing us today, and I'm really grateful to be part of this. I wanted to give a special shout out to Margarita Guzman of VIP for uplifting the impact of poverty as a barrier to accessing life-saving technology, and Amy as well. My name is Catherine Chagru dos Santos, or Kat. I'm the Deputy Executive Director for Programs at the New York City Anti-Violence Project, or AVP. We are a nationally recognized organization that works to respond to and prevent all forms of violence within and against LGBTQ and HIV affected communities. And last year we reached over 13,000 people with our co-located services of clinical services, legal services, outreach, community organizing, and training. Like the other providers on this call, AVP works from a trauma-informed and also an anti-oppressive approach, recognizing that bias, discrimination, and violence intersect for LGBTQ survivors of violence. Our 24/7 English-Spanish hotline supports survivors across the state and across the country, providing crisis intervention, safety planning, support, and services that are culturally specific, responsive, inclusive, and affirming. We also provide legal services, legal representation and advice, advocacy, safety planning, economic empowerment, support groups, and crisis intervention at our Manhattan location and throughout the city. We engage in policy advocacy in the city, state, and national level, and community organizing and mobilizing for change. AVP is the only LGBTQ specific IPV service and advocacy organization in New York City, and only one of 2 in the state, along with In Our Own Voices, who will speak shortly. We are the only LGBTQ specific rape crisis program in New York State. We coordinate the New York State LGBTQ Intimate Partner Violence Network and the National Coalition of Anti-Violence Programs, which publishes national reports on this violence. The CDC has found that LGBTQ people experience intimate partner violence at the same or higher rates as cisgender heterosexual people. NCAVP consistently finds that LGBTQ people of color, transgender and gender nonconforming people, and gay and bisexual men are at disproportionate risk for too often fatal intimate partner violence. In New York, the majority of those we serve at AVP are queer and trans survivors of color. And since the election of 2016, the numbers of immigrant survivors seeking support at AVP has skyrocketed. This violence, intimate partner violence, has increased during the pandemic, as everyone has shared, and also during the rise of anti-LGBTQ hate speech and violence under the current administration, just as barriers to culturally inclusive and affirming safety, support, and services has increased exponentially. Like others on the call, we have increasingly used technology to ensure that isolated survivors can access us in times of crisis and need, as well as to move our community organizing and training work online. My esteemed colleagues have talked through the ways that intimate partner violence and technology intertwine, the ways in which technology can be used to exert power and control, as well as the way we use it as a lifeline, especially during a pandemic. I can't underscore the point enough that for LGBTQ people, technology is often the way that isolated folks can access community, which reduces the isolation that is exacerbated by COVID and by violence, which disproportionately impacts LGBTQ folks and who are also people of color. We want to stress that we need access to safe, effective, affordable technology as organizations and for survivors. I want to highlight 2 things before I go. That technology is often used as a tool, not just for intimate partner violence, but also to exert hate violence. So violence based on bias around someone's LGBTQ identity, from cyberbullying to cyber stalking to cancel culture to outing someone's sexual orientation or gender identity to non-consensual sharing of explicit content to harassment, the list goes on. And we know that hate violence is primarily experienced from folks people know, from neighbors, landlords, tenants, coworkers, supervisors, family members, and former friends, as well as from intimate partners. That sort of hate violence also increases the barriers folks face to getting services and their safety, which may keep them in an unsafe relationship. We want to stress that enhanced penalties, criminal legal solutions, and punishment from the criminal legal system often creates dangers for survivors, particularly for queer and trans survivors of color. And so we agree with Margarita on providing flexible funding directly to survivors to access affordable and free technology, including grants for computers and phones, more free Wi-Fi options, hotspots, et cetera, and that should not be means tested, and direct funding to service providers who support IPV survivors to be trained on how to do more of what is at the FJCs, to do IT security audits on survivors' personal devices, and to help them build additional safety. I know my time is up, and so I'll end there, but I did want to thank you all again, and I would like us to please be sure to include focusing on underserved LGBTQ survivors, including those who identify as men, as non-binary, as queer, and as trans, who are often left out of these conversations and put at increased risk. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Catherine, for your advocacy. I would like to introduce Joan Gerhardt. She is Director of Public Policy and Advocacy of the New York State Coalition Against Domestic Violence.
Thank you, Jessica, and thank you, Senator Salazar and all the other senators who are joining us today. This is just such a great opportunity for domestic violence advocates across the state to make technology abuse so real to you, because we hear about it, but all of the information that the advocates and survivors are presenting today is so worthwhile. And I've got so many new ideas swimming in my head just from the testimony offered so far. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the New York State Coalition Against Domestic Violence, we were established more than 40 years ago, and we're the information clearinghouse and resource center on domestic violence for the state of New York. NISCATIV works closely with the legislature to develop policies and procedures to enhance domestic violence intervention and prevention. And we also provide education and technical assistance to primary purpose domestic violence service providers statewide. As you've heard now quite a bit, technology in its various forms offers essential tools for victims to access help, to strategically maintain safety and privacy, and remain connected to family and friends. But we know offenders are very astute in using the same technology to abuse, exploit, and harass their victims. This includes hacking, installation of spyware, stalking, spoofing, identity theft, impersonation, and the dissemination of sexually explicit images and videos. Perpetrators are able to inflict major and lasting damage very quickly. These harms are pervasive and can affect every aspect of a victim's life, seriously impairing their physical, emotional, and economic well-being. And as technology grows more advanced and more accessible, so too do the methods abusers use to harass and abuse. The National Network to End Domestic Violence surveyed domestic violence programs a couple of years ago about tech abuse. Almost all of those who reported worked on cases involving technology-facilitated abuse. Survivors are experiencing abuse via text messaging and social media. Most concerning, an overwhelming number of survivors report being monitored, either through social media accounts, through text, or having abusers monitor their computer activities. Even more survivors are experiencing technology abuse during the pandemic. Avast, a global leader in digital security and privacy products, recently reported data demonstrating a 51% increase in the use of spy and stalkerware since the pandemic began. And in a NISCATIV-sponsored survey, 100% of the DV advocates who responded reported an increase in tech abuse during the pandemic. With respect to specific recommendations, first, I'd like to offer a collaboration between NISCATIV, domestic violence advocates statewide, and the legislature to review existing laws pertaining to computer crimes, eavesdropping, and privacy, to ensure they apply to an abuser's specific misuse of technology and are sufficient to hold offenders accountable. Next, we ask that you again support Senator Martinez's sextortion bill to make it a crime to threaten to disseminate sexually explicit images, not just the actual dissemination. The bill failed to pass the Assembly earlier this year, but it certainly will be included in our 2021 list of legislative priorities. We also support Senator Krueger's bill expanding the definition of aggravated harassment in the second degree to include contacts via text, email, and other electronic communication, not just phone calls. We intend to work with Senator Krueger's office to ensure the bill is as broad as possible to include all social media platforms and new technologies that may be developed in the future. And of course, we're hoping the governor signs Senator Bailey's bill that was mentioned earlier to expand orders of protection to include a refrain from controlling smart home technologies. I really appreciate the discussion we've heard earlier about making it easier for domestic violence survivors experiencing tech abuse to obtain an order of protection and to hold offenders accountable because of their tech abuse. We've heard frequently that it's very hard to prove this abuse or to prove aggravated harassment. We also think courts can be clearer when ordering orders of protection that refrain from harassing or communicating with a victim specifically includes all forms of tech abuse. We'd like to work with the legislature to require social media platforms operating in New York to have a specific policy to investigate and address tech abuse by their users. This policy might include clear guidance for victims on how to report misuse, the requisite documentation needed for the company to take action, and the measures they will take to respond. And finally, we'd like the legislature to consider making changes to the statutory definition of a victim of domestic violence to include tech abuse and financial abuse. NISCATIV sincerely appreciates the Senator's focus on this ever-evolving issue, and we look forward to collaborating with you to ensure the safety of domestic violence survivors and their families across the state. Your interest and support is truly appreciated, and we are optimistic it will enhance safety for all New Yorkers experiencing domestic violence. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I want to give you a special thanks again for all your participation and collaboration here with our office in putting this event together. Thank you very much, Joanne.
Absolutely.
I also want to take this time to introduce our next panelist, Sarah St. Vincent. She's the director of the Clinic to End Tech Abuse at Cornell Tech. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, all of you, for being here at this event. Thank you, Senator Salazar, for organizing this. We at CETA address tech abuse full time. That is our role. And thank you, Bridget, for mentioning the Family Justice Centers and tech abuse checks. You might actually be talking about our group. We serve survivors of all genders in all 5 boroughs of New York City. We take referrals from the Family Justice Centers, and our volunteers then help survivors check the privacy and security of their accounts and devices. We have a very close partnership with the Mayor's Office to End Domestic and Gender-Based Violence. They're key partners for us, and we really are deeply appreciative of that relationship and think it can be a model in other places as well. We also do original research on tech abuse, and we publish the results at our ipvtechresearch.org website. So I think when starting this discussion, even though spyware gets understandably and I think justifiably a lot of attention, I want to note that among our clients, we tend not to find as much spyware as we would expect, possibly because survivors have often gotten new devices by the time they reach us. What we do find is quite a lot of evidence of account compromises. And if someone knows or guesses the password to your Google, meaning Gmail account, or your iCloud account that's tied to your Apple device, they can often see just as much information about you as spyware would allow. And so we have a lot of concerns about the extent to which that kind of account compromise is being policed and is really captured in laws around this. I would like to thank all of you who had supported the bill last year that lets survivors get out of family phone plans. I think that bill was an excellent step. We definitely see family phone plans being potentially misused as stalking tools in a variety of ways. People who are part of the plan can often see location information about each other, call and text records. These plans can also come with basically spyware produced by the phone companies. It's ostensibly child monitoring software, but it can be used on non-consenting adults as well. And survivors often don't realize what it is. It just looks like something from AT&T or Verizon, and they don't realize what it is that's actually on their phone. We would love to see that law be expanded and be made even more survivor friendly by allowing survivors to self-certify. Right now, survivors would have to submit evidence of the abuse to the phone company. And the law doesn't really kind of explain what sort of privacy protections there are and doesn't yet require phone companies to make information about this available. Many survivors and even advocates don't realize that this ability exists. I also want to talk as well, there was a mention of people search websites, I believe. So it's not just Googling, there are private companies out there that get information about where you live and other information about you from utility companies, from marketers. And there's nothing to stop an abuser from going on a website like Spokeo and buying access to that information. So for survivors, we often, unfortunately, that's not something you can deal with through technical advice. It becomes a game of whack-a-mole for survivors where we say something like, you know, go try Safe Shepherd. But the reality is that for survivors, it can become another nightmare running around trying to get your information removed from these websites that can let the abuser figure out where you are in a way that was done completely without your consent. I also want to talk about location data. Under federal law, there's a gap in the Wiretap Act where location data, unfortunately, is not covered or only ambiguously covered. And so a lot of spyware makers seem to be exploiting this by kind of not necessarily doing things that will directly run afoul of the Wiretap Act, but letting abusers track the person's location. I think that New York state law could help fill that gap in federal law by tackling the issue of apps that collect your location without your consent and share your location without your consent. I also want to second what Stella said. So right now, for example, Google will let survivors see the past 28 days worth of login histories. So the IP addresses of devices that have logged in. Other companies such as Apple will only show you who is logged in right now. I think if companies were made to share with survivors all the records the company keeps in its normal course of business about logins to the account, if survivors could get access to that, it could really be helpful to them in a variety of ways. There's certainly more than I could say. I will put in the chat box. We have step-by-step illustrated resources to detecting and ending tech abuse on various platforms that our volunteers have created. So again, I'll put that in the chat box. You can also find it on our website, ceta.tech.cornell.edu. It's on our resource page under, so if you click Get Help, you'll find it. Also, any of your clients, if you are in New York City, you can refer them to the Family Justice Centers, which can refer them to us, and we can do those tech checkups for them. Thanks again for having us, and thank you again for tackling this issue.
Thank you, Sarah. It's very, very helpful information. Thank you. I would like to now introduce Tandra Legrone, Chief Executive Director of In Our Own Voices.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me and including me in this important conversation, Senators. And it's a pleasure to be here and an honor. And I'm just going to follow up, and I want to say thank you, Kat, from AVP. Kat did a very thorough presentation on the LGBTQ community. As you all know, I'm Tandra Legrone. I am the CEO of In Our Own Voices. In Our Own Voices is a lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people of color organization. We're housed in the capital region of Albany, New York. And as Kat mentioned, we are one of two culturally specific organizations that focus on anti-violence. And we house the Capital Region Anti-Violence, LGBT Anti-Violence project here in the Capital Region. And so I would like to kind of give you a little overview of some of the services that In Our Own Voices provide. As I stated, In Our Own Voices provide culturally specific services to LGBT individuals under our Capital Region Anti-Violence Program. We are a non-residential program, so we provide individual counseling. We also have the Crime Victims Program through In Our Own Voices, where we will walk a victim or a survivor of a crime or domestic violence or sexual assault from the courtroom all the way straight through to the emergency room, and help them, assist them with compensation for any losses that they have may have experienced, including loss of a loved one or death. We have emergency, under our Capital Region LGBT project, we have emergency assistance, which include rental assistance, clothing, personal care, food, anything that a survivor or a person that has been a victim of domestic violence or sexual assault or a crime, including hate crimes, we will walk you through that process. I think the most, one of the few things that I want to just piggyback off of Kat's presentation is that the theme around people of color. I think that BIPOC and LGBT folks throughout this presentation has been highlighted as a very underserved population that experience anti-violence, and that experience violence and hate crimes. We here in the Capital Region, we have constituents that have come through our doors that the difficulty that they are facing around technology is access. It has worked for, in some cases, because it allows individuals to build cases against the perpetrators, but in the same sense that the theme that has been mentioned all day, that is also used as an attack and oftentimes can lead to crime and death We know that in the capital region 2 years ago, here in Troy, New York, a family of 4 that was LGBT was brutally murdered. The partner and 2 children. Part of that included abuse with technology as well, text messaging. But we also know that our transgender and elderly and aging population are experiencing and lack of access to technology, but through the isolation, as Kat mentioned, that they are utilizing Facebook, which we also understand that 99% of the survivors or victims of crime or sexual assault or domestic violence that come through our doors say that Facebook is the tool that is being used against them. And so some of the recommendations that we would like to put forth, I think it was already mentioned, Amy mentioned, Kat mentioned, Joan mentioned, is that the only thing that I would like to add to that is the focus and having a specific, culturally specific focus for LGBT people of color that would allow technical assistance, training and technical assistance, what it means and what is abuse, domestic violence and technology, how is it being used? And the last thing, because I see my time is up, the other thing that we are seeing that our constituents are experiencing is here in the capital region, and I'm sure in New York City, the lack of shelter for specifically LGBT TGNC folks. There is a high need for folks to be able to shift their thinking and their thinking around who have access to shelter and what does that mean sheltering the LGBTQ community as we move forward with this. And I would request specific funding for that need. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra, for your recommendations. I would like now to introduce Rachel Gartner, Program Director of the Domestic Violence Project of Warren and Washington counties. Welcome.
Thank you so much. And thank you to Senator Salazar and all the other senators for this opportunity to address the significant intersection between domestic violence and technology. I'd like to thank in particular Senator Little, our representative, who for so many years has been such a support to the Domestic Violence Project and to victims of domestic violence in our community. Thank you to the other speakers and participants for your prior testimony and expertise. I am the Program Director of Catholic Charities of Saratoga, Warren, and Washington Counties Domestic Violence Project, serving Warren and Washington County. We are the only victim service program serving rural Warren and Washington counties in upstate. We provide assistance, including a safe dwelling, a hotline, advocacy, supportive services, counseling and support groups, and community education and outreach. I want to thank all of the prior speakers for really centering and framing the issues of domestic violence and technology and by centering the needs of victims. I'd also like to say that the needs of rural victims and programs are uniquely impacted by the use and abuse of technology. For rural isolated victims are both dependent on technology for connection and are challenged by issues of availability. Added to that, the realities of victims' lives and access to limited resources because of poverty and the intersection with domestic violence, the concerns around technology are tremendous. As previously mentioned, so many programs, including ours, were able to creatively and quickly pivot to remote and online service delivery, but with many challenges. Our small programs struggled with Wi-Fi access, both in our office, providing services directly to victims, but also in our shelter, where so often access to technology is a lifeline for complying with the needs of the Department of Social Services, for looking for employment and housing opportunities, for school attendance. And we struggled mightily and still do on many days with issues around Wi-Fi connection. And so the only other things I would want to add to today's conversation, which I think has been so rich and robust, but is in addition, training for law enforcement, prosecutors' offices, and also family courts around the intersectionality of domestic violence and technology. So often we find victims, as many others have mentioned, being challenged by accessing those available supports, and anything that we can do to educate and enlighten those service models would be really helpful. And I would also want to echo the availability of flexible funding and resources, both for victims to obtain the technology resources that they require for safety and survival, and also for programs to be able to enhance both their availability of technology and also their use of technology. So thank you very much for this opportunity and for your attention to the needs of victims in New York State.
Thank you, Rachel Gardner. Thank you for that testimony. Thank you to Tandra Lebron, Sarah St. Vincent, John Garhat, Catherine Shogro dos Santos, Amy Barash. Thank you again for all your advocacy and input and recommendations in this much needed and fruitful discussion. Now I would like to open it for any questions or comments that the senators may have.
I'll ask, I'll try to make it quick. I was just thinking about this as Tandra was speaking earlier. I think it was last year, we passed a bill, Senator Hoylman's bill, and it was signed into law to make it so that property owners couldn't retaliate against a tenant if they call the police in an intimate partner violence situation or domestic violence situation. But we know that survivors, victims are often put at risk of losing their housing due to intimate partner violence at no fault of their own, because perhaps noise complaints, things that it isn't necessarily about the law enforcement showing up, but for other reasons. What steps do you think that we can take, and this is of course open to anyone else, to protect survivors in those situations where the property owner might say, that in a situation, say where a partner, an abusive partner is yelling or is destructive, in situations like that, how do we protect the survivor or victim?
I could speak just generally. This is not necessarily my primary area of expertise, but I would say the nuisance legislation was super helpful, I think, in that way. Honestly, I think the extension of the eviction moratorium far further is really important. And we are also seeing LGBTQ survivors experience, many of them also are experiencing intimate partner violence, experiencing harassment from landlords, even though they can't legally evict them at this moment, that they're still demanding rent and in some cases engaging in sexual harassment, other sorts of hate violence. These folks may not feel they can go to the police, or just being cognizant of that. And I think allowing survivors of intimate partner violence to step back from leases without any sort of penalty, without having to first prove they're a survivor by going to the police, would be helpful. I think, again, any solutions that we could provide things like safety transfers within NYCHA, any sort of thing where there exists a valve for a safety transfer or a safety sort of get out of the commitment to be able to be done without having to use the criminal legal system or the child welfare system or a state system, and to use a letter from an organization that is recognized by the state as a service provider, right? Which, as anyone providing services on this call would be. So, yeah, I think things like that really sort of expanding the ways, and also, this is going to sound really obvious, but like housing, right? Continuing to think about the housing crisis in the state, affordable housing in general, thinking things like the Fair Chance for Housing Coalition, housing stability support, I think particularly for communities of color, for queer folks, for undocumented immigrants. Something else that worked really well in the city recently was that the Mayor's Office of Immigration Affairs and the Immigration Coalition were able to get a hold of some gift cards that we were able to give to people who were not otherwise eligible for the federal stimulus. And AVP was able to give out almost $250,000 worth of these gift cards. It was a tremendous amount of work. But I do think thinking about, as Margarita mentioned, the folks who were sort of not documented, facing poverty, facing increased risks of violence, of intimate partner violence, and if they're also queer or trans, these things just adding layer upon layer. So thinking about economic supports that are directed towards these largely underserved folks would be helpful in these ways.
I'd just like to briefly add to Senator, I think you're absolutely right. That right to call 911 bill was so critical. I would say that law and Senator Persaud's Domestic Violence Survivor Justice Act were probably two of the most important and essential pieces of legislation that passed in 2019. And I think you raise a really interesting point of, whether we can look at even expanding the right to call the nuisance ordinance law to other types of behavior that abusers might be, conducting within leased space, to see if we can broaden it even more. So happy to look at that a little bit more with you.
So I just wanted to add, so I have been listening, even though the video has been off. I am parenting, remote learning while we're doing these important tasks. And I wanted to make sure I recognize this panel and the prior panel for, all of the hard work and some of the concerns that some of the individuals have gone through. I just wanted to add a couple of things about how can we revolutionize our state. And we talked about the digital divide, and we talked about some of the issues that we have with connectivity. I guess I think this might have been a statute, and I hope that it has. But if it hasn't, I'm going to have my staff look into it anyway, about the ability for victims of DV to be able to separate themselves. Okay, get another juice. That's what's happening. So the ability for victims of domestic violence to be able to release themselves from not just wireless contracts, but cable contracts and so many other issues. I believe that it is something that is statutory, but if it's not, it's something that we should be looking into and making it more expansive to include internet packages, to include all of these things that we're talking about that we're not encompassing. Because I think it was Sarah in the prior panel talked about the literal catch-22 the catch-21 that we're in, that catch-22 I believe that we're in, that it comes to, we need tech and we need to be served by tech, but we can't afford tech literally or figuratively. So I just want to figure out if those statutes aren't in, we should be trying to expand those. And also those specific streams of funding that Tandra mentioned just most recently. I think those are things that we definitely need to figure out. We're in budget hell, for lack of a better term, but we can't forget those who need the most help from government in times of need. It had prior bills about, and I wanted to ask folks about this, at a prior bill about waiting lists for NYCHA, victims of domestic violence, actually passed the Senate, not this session, the past session, getting priority in terms of waiting lists for NYCHA. And I'm wondering, how can we have conversations about expanding those things, especially in times of need, when you have so much need as related to COVID and DV and tech, that intersectionality. Look, I just wanted to make sure, less of a question, but more of just adulation and letting you know that I was in fact paying attention, even though the video was off, as we're doing a lot of things here. So I just wanted to thank you all for your hard work. And again, tip my hat to Senator Salazar for convening us today.
Yes, hi. I think you're absolutely right, Senator Belli. I think that we, as technology is growing and moving rapidly, that it is important that we find a way to collect the data and be able to use that data to show trends and emerging issues that are, so we can get more ahead of the curve. Because I look back, and some of us who have been doing this work for a long time, you can almost see the trend that we were leading towards this place where the ways of power and control that are going to be used were increasing, and they were increasing rapidly. I remember back in the 90s when we had a case where a person was utilizing the thermostat to inflict power and control over his wife. So I think if we began to really collect this data, and data collection is and very important that we include this into our intake form, into our systems that we have created already, and using language to make sure that we are also able to share. And I think AVP and CAVP, they do an amazing job of trying to get the data out very quickly, but it changes and it's expensive to shift some of that stuff and to be able to look at the things that we can support and can have resources added to. And sometimes those are smaller things. Thank you.
Thank you, Tandra. I just wanted to add a quick thing, which is that if we are talking about that NYCHA waiting list, which was such a huge achievement, to get that law passed is really, again, to continue to decouple eligibility for that list in the beginning from the criminal legal system. We've gotten better. We used to require you to be physically harmed multiple times before you could qualify. We've reduced that, but again, to a contracted domestic violence organization recognized by the state, recognized by the city, could give a recommendation that this person qualifies. I think we need to keep doing that as well. Sorry to interrupt.
So I just want to make a point again, Senator Salazar. I really want to thank you for hosting this because it's given me some more things to think about with the Internet and Technology Committee. I mean, one of the things that's come across over and over as you all have been discussing it is the tendency we all have now to share information about ourselves and not realize how dangerous that is without thinking about it. One of the other issues that is before my committee and is a major issue, not just in New York, but in fact across the world, is the issue of data privacy. Who owns your data? How much we give away unwittingly? Who buys it? Who sells it? Who transfers it? And we do it every day, not even thinking about it. And what's at risk with our data privacy issues? Europe has taken a pretty aggressive approach with the passage of the GDPR. California's Consumer Privacy Protection Act was adopted, although I think it's a subject of litigation right now. And we have some bills before my committee and before the Consumer Protection Committee that would do more to protect consumer privacy and data. But at the end of the day, the internet has no borders. It doesn't stop at the New York state line. So it's almost impossible to prevent people from doing things, it's particularly since your cell phone number can originate in Alaska and you could be here in New York. And so I think we really need to kind of take a look at how technology has really expanded. To be honest, I always say we're better off with a 50-state solution to some of these problems as opposed to 50 state solutions. But I don't really hold out much hope that Washington is going to come up with some of the answers to these challenges. So we're going to have to be creative here in New York and trying to figure out how do we update our penal code to address some of this. Some of you have talked about tech abuse and financial abuse being added to the issue of to the categories of what is constituted as domestic violence. You would think it would be, but use of data, the stalking people online and social media. How do we beef up the order of protection so that district attorneys are willing to pursue them as violations of the orders of protection? And what can we do also to educate people so that they're less willing to share information that they shouldn't. And then finally, I think we all have to be honest and recognize, as I said, I did this work years ago. Many people, many women, particularly women who have been abused, are going to wind up back with their abusers at some point. That's their family, especially if they share children with each other. And so what we don't want to do is create too many new crimes, because then we're going to make criminals out of children's fathers, right? So we have to be cognizant of that too. And that's what makes this so complicated, dealing with domestic violence cases and victims of domestic violence, recognizing that sometimes, in spite of everything, these are family members who find their way back to each other, and even when they shouldn't, but they do. So I want to thank Senator Salazar and Senator Bailey Senator Montgomery, Senator Little, Senator Prasad, and all of you for taking the time today to meet with us and kind of give us some direction as we continue to grapple with this, terrible tragedy that befalls many families in New York and everywhere. Thank you.
So I just had one more question comment hybrid before I finish up. And again, I just want to say thank you again for the opportunity to all my colleagues for all the work that they've done. I stand on your shoulders. As the chair of the Codes Committee, I have been lulled, and I am from the Velman at Montgomery School of I don't want to.
No penalty enhancers.
Right, I am uninterested in the concept of penalty enhancers. However, I live in a world that is not black and white, but most things are in a shade of gray. So what I'd like to do is, and I hope that I'm an approachable sort, but if it hasn't been, I would like to have this invitation that I like to have more dialogue about what we would consider to be things that we can do to enhance protections. Because I want to look at it from an enhancing protections perspective as opposed to enhancing penalties. And I don't want to be I don't want to be in a position where we're drafting legislation that is enhancing penalties unduly on people, because as Senator Savino said, we are creating and perpetuating more cycles of injustice when we blindly raise penalties to say that we're helping folks, right? So I want to have more conversations in the capacity of as the chair of the Codes Committee with all of you in the groups that were on prior, so that we can have conversations about what are areas that we can enhance statutes without creating newer classes of criminals, so to speak. While we punish where we have to, and punish, I don't even like the word punish, where we rehabilitate where we have to, but we protect most importantly. So I just want to make sure that I put that out there, that's my mentality towards my statutory duties and my policymaking duties, but also recognize that there's more work in this area in terms of protection. I just wanted to make sure I put that out there and put the general question of, just hopefully that we can reach out and have another dialogue with my capacity as well as Senator Salazar, women's issues, and so we can have more conversations about that, because I don't want to raise penalties and send more people to jail. That's not what I want to do. But I'm also uninterested in seeing more situations like we had in Queens the other day, where you had just a heinous act, and it's like, I don't know enough about that, but were there other signals prior to that? And people like the families indicated that there were signs, right? What signs were picked up on, what were not acted on. I don't want to, I don't like using cases for the sake of bolstering a point, but that one hit differently, because she's a 29-year-old woman, 6 months pregnant, and it's what was happening prior to that. So I'm going to stop now. I stand at the ready to work further and to make sure that our criminal codes and our penal codes do better with these scenarios. Thank you.
So I just quickly wanted to thank Senator Salazar and all my other colleagues for doing this. The conversation we have to continue having, it's not just saying it's a women's issue. We need to look at it as a family issue. Domestic violence affects families. Last week, or this week actually, we saw that there were 3 heinous domestic violence acts, that occurred within New York City. And this is something that's happening across our state, across our country. In the past few weeks, we need to have conversations with law enforcement, because they're not understanding when a person contacts them and talks about them being stalked, cyber stalking and all of this, and they have an order of protection. As Senator Savino said, she spoke with the DA on what they have to do. But law enforcement at the lower levels, they really are not receptive to when people are calling them about these issues. I don't think there's any cohesive, comprehensive conversation that's ever had with them. For me, every precinct has a different understanding of what the rules means. And we have to have conversations about that. So while Senator Bailey is talking about not having penalty enhancers, sometimes I agree with Senator Montgomery on that, but it's not only about having penalty enhancers. Before we get to that stage, we have to have conversations so that the people who are charged with bringing someone in understands what is really occurring. You know, last 2 weeks ago, I had someone go into a precinct, and because they were afraid, they have an order of protection, they're being stalked, you know, there are all kinds of things that are happening to them in the electronic age. And the precinct, the persons in the precinct told them to go home and says, when you go home, call 911. Why are you sending that person back into the situation that they have an order of protection for? What happens? You don't know what the situation is when that person returns to the home. So we have to have those conversations with law enforcement. They, you know, years ago, DV was, you know, everybody shrugged their shoulder, oh, it just happens. And then we also have to have those cultural conversations in communities where that's looked upon as like, oh, that's just your husband, that's just what families do. There are communities today that are still accepting of that. So it's not just, we have to change the conversation across the board with everyone, bringing people to the table. So that when we're talking about legislation, we bring all of these aspects into consideration, because we don't want to put legislation out there that will box certain communities in, and then they're not understanding of what we're doing. So I want us to continue to have the conversation. I appreciate Senator Salazar and Senator Savino deciding to have this conversation, but we have to have this conversation more in terms of families. Please, we have to stop saying it's only a women's issue. There are many, many men who are going through this also. I see it in my community, and they're asking us to have the conversation about them. So again, thank you all very much.
Thank you, Senator Prasad. I see Senator Little has her hand raised.
Yes, I just wanted to say that this has been a great conversation. I appreciate all the people from all those organizations who are working so hard on this issue and have done so much already. And as Senator Savino said, this is a complicated issue, because I will tell you that in a rural area, your cell phone can save your life. But listening to what can go on through harassment and constant and threat and all of this, it can really drive you to just, you know, crazy too, as well as hurt you and your entire family. So complicated issue. I know you're all going to work hard on it, and wish you well. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Little. And thank you all so much again. First, you know, thank you to the senators for taking time to participate, but especially to all of the panelists for sharing your expertise and your experiences with us. This truly has been such a thoughtful conversation, and I especially appreciate the emphasis on seeking to protect and hold accountable rather than criminalize, not only because of categorical opposition to expanding the carceral system, which I share with Senator Bailey, with Senator Montgomery, with others, but also because we know that criminal penalties and law enforcement are currently too frequently weaponized against victims, actually, rather than abusers in certain situations. So, so that's just something that I always want to keep in mind when we are looking at solutions, potential solutions to this issue. And I really feel like this was a generative roundtable and conversation. And I'm taking away from it a fair number of policy recommendations. And I'm really looking forward to continuing this conversation, because we all know that a couple hours is insufficient. And we want to continue to work on this and make progress so that we can protect and empower people in these situations. So really cannot thank all of you enough.
Excellent. Thank you again. Thank you everyone for your time. Thank you, Senator Salazar. Thank you, Senator Savino, Senator Prasad, Senator Bailey, Senator Little, Senator Montgomery, Senator Kaplan. Thank you for all the participants, Seven Dancers Coalition, the Jewish Board of Family and Children's Services. Thank you to Vera House, Barriers Living, Safe Horizon, Her Justice, NYC Anti-Violence Project, New York State Coalition Against Domestic Violence Project of Warren and Washington Counties, Violence Intervention Program. Thank you to Clinic End and Tech Abuse, and In Our Own Voices. Thank you, everyone.